Contention one is horse trading, Arctic drilling, face backlash, now board 25, Trump's EO open, the Arctic on limits on drilling, but Trump can't make things happen. Environmental laws must be followed, legal challenges are certain. It'll get struck down. Only Congress can solve. Raymond 25, whether a president can revoke a predecessor decision remains outside of group. See Trump's order to revoke a decision by Obama. Judge ruled Trump's order was unlawful. Also left only Congress with the power to overturn withdrawals of land. The plan requires concessions. Port 25, nuclear had a breakthrough with lawmakers set their sights lower. Region across the aisle will be necessary. Bipartisanship is being tested. Dems refuse to work with Republicans. Others believe nuclear shouldn't have to rely on Gal funding. Dems have been adverse to pull from the LPL, specifically climate policy, development, and drilling. Fizzy 13, concessions to the fossil fuel industry are presented. A quick concessions measure for climate measure concessions in Taiwan's drilling and extended to the Atlantic coast combined with climate legislation. Drilling costs great power. Across 20 its ice cap, more territory will be available for drilling. Nations will be economically invested. Rhetoric the U.S., China, and Russia will influence each other, expanding involvement viewed by other nations as a threat to their interests and pit countries against each other. Regional conflicts extend into a larger war. Contention to terror. Trump radicalized terrorists. Pop 25. Trump's called to relocate Palestinians, put Americans in context of extremist rally. Hamas, Al Qaeda, the Islamic State, proposing to seize Gaza, give substance to the narrative the U.S. is a real threat. Nuclear energy is a golden opportunity. Cower 23. Nuclear facility and transfer have been targets. Assailants collecting intel on nuclear plants. 91 incidents against nuclear explosions where frequent reactors under construction targeted growing threat for transportation. Radiation releases are transfer move cause major fear. Terrorists find strikes attractive. Attacks spread horror, cause mass panic. Perception-based impacts reduce willingness to invest. And SMRs lack security. 1124 regulators loosen requirements for SMRs reduce security to protect from attacks. SMRs become radiological weapons. Safety could be disabled. Trump's psychology ensures nuclear retaliation. Since not of existing, Trump would experience a large narcissistic industry personalities don't have also to emergencies. Trump would exhibit impulsivity, leave no slight unavenged. Attacks on the U.S. would mean restraints to WMD would be subsidized. Barriers, including public opinion, will be low. Extinction. Starting 50. Nuclear strike lead to loss of atmosphere. Tornadoes, anti-gravitational effect take the place stock atmosphere into space. Earth become dead planet. Contention 3 is pull out. Demand for nuclear is low. WNR 25. There are no more reactors under construction in the U.S. Half of the reactors are under construction in China. Abroad, 93% are implementing nuclear weapon states. Nobody wants Russian or Chinese reactors. Graham 20. Russia and China offer disadvantageous debt relationship agreements to the U.S. Reap relations. The U.S. is the best and more trusted. The Aff feels experts. Perception calls the war. Zelensky 14. Countries can be so programmed to use facilities for bombs. 10 nations trying to balance deterrent equations will be impossible. Members in the NPT cheat risk military response having a nuclear program powers necessary to deal with climate only if over 1,000 plants in dozens one country. Safeguards are off. Zelensky 20. Enthusiasts say if we sell loser terms will have influence. AI Saudi Arabia don't pay attention to the statement that if Iran get a bomb, he get one. Two. Trump opposes tightening security. Proliferation causes preemptive strikes. Sabala 23. Spread nukes imposes two threats to security. The first is deliberate first strike in fear of attack or preventive war. The second is accidental use due to malfunction. Contention for UVs. UVs are popular but limited by energy. B18 UVC increased from the Navy. UVs currently battery powered to have limited capability duration less than 24 hours on others recharging. Does that prevent sub hunting? Parsons 13. The robotic submarine power of source effects range. Important UAVs must run long distance periods to collect data for surveillance. And Navy's UAV roadmap calls for finding enemy subs. Nuclear energy overcomes limitations. Team 21 shooting performance have been evaluated to show feasibility of nuclear and unmanned facility. Lifetime reliability, energy density limitations overcome by nuclear power. Ideal for UVs with a cycle of 30 months. No removal parts, speed of construction. Investment is key to integration. Sun 20. Western reactors built for crude subs that influence design. New reactor will be needed. Projects have to overcome funding challenges. Reactors on autonomous subs, something likely in Russia. UVs destabilize China's second strike, causing preemptive strikes. Johnson 20 UVs could locate and destroy nuclear armed subs due to current slowness of drone trailing. Implausible if state view subs that risk drones have a destabilizing effect. Perception of feasibility creates incentive to strike preemptively in Taiwan. SSCS UVs threaten China's nuclear fleets. No subs Chinese commanders fear their small fleet can be neutralized. Contender 5 is LNG. LNG exports are high. Shashria 25 LNG ensure NATO unity. Trump's agenda cement LNG growth and production boost exports. The U.S. and EU form task force to ensure stable demand. Imports rise 318%. Global demand robust until 2050. Investments necessary. Offering LC 25 new LNG projects in final investment phase. The Aff trades off with investment demand for LNG, but top 23 if LNG becomes less attractive to alternatives, prices less competitive, impacting profitability. The investment reallocated from LNG decarbonization efforts to decrease demand for LNG, diminish production, uncertainty, DEX protection. False 21 gas events are profile with disruptions uneven commitment by governments inconsistent policy. A rapid edging out with nuclear replaces them. Perceptions everything invested in alternatives to offset natural gas only create potential lure for risking the hunt for resources. LNG is key to NATO. Co 20 for America's energy enables Europe to avoid total dependence on Russia. Crucial to security. LNG supports transatlantic stability and co-op. Strong energy essential for NATO deterrence. Defense LNG the most important significant leverage over NATO to Russia. Otherwise, Russia attacks NATO 24. Decision to attack NATO will exploit the alliance in a moment of weakness. Bigger resistance in 2025 while peak production, refurbishment, and readiness intersect. Ukraine, part of a long game that consumed resources. Russia gearing up for a long war.
We from Conundrum 1 to Space, Mars is inside Greenfield by 25. President has a relationship with Musk to test Starship to transport people on Mars, going to get a program started Trump tells NASA to move from lunar to Mars, helping exploration be efficient because of the way planet align Moto. The Mars open up in 26 to 28 Musk next year. Reliable energy sustains human settlement problem 21. Salvaging Mars requires scalable power focus on Martian environment needed to information board planet take an atmosphere obtain water future. Missions require long stays and vision. Mission crews to 10,000 and for depend on power to ramp a population of nuclear is key, but investment is needed. 20. Nuclear provides uninterrupted supply that keeps astronauts alive on dusty surface. Solar struggle to collect light. Nuclear provides for years design. Lightweight enough for space reactors. Say particles can't penetrate skin. Reactors depend on sufficient funding that enables lateral innovation was 20. Mars study for decades ideal to test new tech and lay the groundwork for exploration. The U.S. program, an extraordinary catalyst for innovation of GPS and medicals. The Canberra was NASA developed collaborative tools to link scientists from around the world. Multiplanetary civilization solved extinction tracker 16. Plans to colonize Mars, backup humanity on Earth will be eventual extinction. GRB, black holes, asteroids, nuclear, bio, ASI are close and not foreseeable. People think progress is automatic. Huge mistake. Even if extinction happens later, window open. Political obstruction means window could close. The U.S. is key. Harrison 24. U.S. lead space comprised 81% of launch capacity, 4 times the world combined introduction to space. Our Starship increasingly connected to its transition. Nuclear energy facilitates the green transition. Around 23. Transition made with advanced nuclear renewability replace fossil fuels. That nuclear energy will not solve warming. Waste 1% of legacy renewables. How project uses social impact of mining, recycling challenges. Nuclear better on cost. Advanced tech provides 9,000 years of energy. Waste can become fuel. Advanced tech commercially viable and U.S. can be deployed in time to meet goals. Advanced nuclear is unique. And Snyder 23. IFRS extract 99% of energy in uranium. Today is only 0.6% renewable, non-reusable. Earth does not have sufficient materials 5 times more than existed. It solves climate change. Matthew 22. Plans produce no emissions over its life comparable with wind and 1/3 solar. Nuclear can be deployed on large scale. Nuclear is reducing emissions 2 gigatons per year. Continuous energy. Where solar and wind require backup is compensated. 2 years of emissions can conquer climate change. It's complementary to renewables. Parameter 3. Nuclear energy can fill the gaps in scale and complement wind and solar can drive clean energy through transport and building potential is achievable. Investment will be required for transition. Nuclear power plays a significant role. Power accounts for 30% of global emissions, triple by 2050, driven by electrification. Affirmative makes energy cost effective and commercialized. 922. Policies for finance, lower cost and reduce risk, demonstration, bridge R&D, commercialization, cost during vital financial risk and record of success, hackers promote adoption and incentives to improve economics and nuclear subsidies, accelerate deployment nuclear. This is a good case for inclusion. Federal procurement will provide a strong market signal incentivizing fuel repurposing, ensures fast deployment at Sonic 24. SMR repurpose coal plants for powering offers clean energy, existing transmission lines into power, reduce construction time. The U.S. first global fall-on brick. 11. Demonstration of power leading global deployment, energy security, and interest align every nation. SAG encourages uptake. We are forcing nations to reinvent the wheel. Several assets to share global opportunities. Standardize warming, causes extinction. 12. 12. Climate change, which is typically centuries faster than projection models, downplay non-linear process past. It no longer to the future, allowing a permafrost, loss of coral, collapse of AMOC, trigger domino effects, including loss of crop instability, emissions peak. As renewables become obvious, higher decline will be slowly policy making, not holding warming by major scientists. 82% expect catastrophic impacts as less emissions decline, weather result, if failures of water, trade, and security feedbacks drive the Earth to no return. Humans lack the capacity to stop warming. Existential threat can exist at 1.5 degrees. Contention 3 is aviation. U.S. Air Force will lack sustainable aviation fuels. MERS 24. Fossil fuels challenge challenge security. Essays for revolutionize aviation, mitigate vulnerabilities, produce domestically, ensure effectiveness. Some no force to use SAS nuclear energy as key, but investment is needed. DD 24. Same fuel scales and large volumes use same infra and existing assets, hydrogen, nuclear, relevant and low cost, reliable to supply energy for carbon capture, create closed loop uptake, limited small power use, launch electrolysis, leverage existing system barrier. As policy concerns the cost for reactors to make competitive syn fuel, we need cheap CO2 and hydrogen biofuels. Specific feedstock is limited to cost. Fixed with cost, like syn fuels running on nuclear, the cheapest option. Carbon capture requires heat, which nuclear produces hydrogen from nuclear key. Delgado 3. Scaling reduce decreases dispatchership without credit H2 cost, increase low tech cost, make tech viable, lower the current prices using nuclear energy, cost attractive option. We're reducing emission called 92% qualifies SAF. SAF revolutionize air force capabilities, disrupt alliances, almost new fuel, increase speed and climate rates. DoD spends $7 billion a year on fuel, impacts budget as significantly domestically. Source increasing control over price fuel, rights fuel controls, increasing payload to challenge is not competitive because the cost of investment. Bring down high review climate is the biggest issue in the Pacific, mitigating climate change. Pillar of co-SAs build bind local production access to econ, assisted result in network power projection, absent air dominance, China invades Taiwan. 23. Air denial deterrent invasion positions U.S. trends against China weakened air dominance. So necessary amphibious opposite of 14% without air superior check rate down G's about China's air superior to aggression under nuclear power, leading nuclear risk happens in Weaver. 23. Taiwan president nuclear U.S. China war fails and returns to invasion of circa 2027 to being access to the CCP undermine U.S. alliance strategic position China to degrade U.S. from Russia no aggression. Just Berkey and Claire cut.
Can I take the first question?
Yeah.
The aviation advantage, why is nuclear key to hydrogen?
Because it makes it what?
Why can't we make it through other ways?
It's just more expensive.
Okay.
But the point is like nuclear is the best way to do it. It also creates a closed capture loop where the carbon capture systems don't have to use energy to get the carbon out, which makes it more sustainable. Can I have a question?
Yeah.
On horse trading, what's the internal link?
The internal link, the gross evidence says that as countries sort of mine in the Arctic, where countries get more involved, other countries, i.e., if the US gets more
Why
involved
wouldn't we just mine in our own in EEZ?
the evidence says that that doesn't matter because it is about the perception of actors becoming more involved in the Arctic.
Wait, okay, but if they know we're gonna mine in our own EEZ, I don't see why they would think we'd
Well,
mine in the
the
Arctic.
bore evidence is also about just broad Arctic drilling. It is not only about our
Okay,
EEZ
but the thing I'm saying is why would we do that? We're not stupid.
because the Trump wants to. Trump is pretty
Can you read
stupid.
me a quote from your evidence that says that?
Open the Arctic, undo limits on drilling.
Where does it say Trump wants?
Trump's executive order.
Okay, but that's not in our own EEZ. That's in our own EEZ, not in other
No, the evidence
countries'
just says
territory.
Arctic drilling.
Yeah, the point is, why would we drill in other EEZs that would
Well,
threaten
because Trump
us?
wants resources. The evidence
Okay,
also,
resources
gross
that we get
okay,
from our own
also, the gross
territory.
evidence is just about economic involvement in the region. It says that rhetoric of the US, China, and Russia alone are enough to threaten each other, i.e., if the US starts drilling, even for example, in Alaska, that sort of makes Russia and China
This threat to their
uncomfortable
regional
because the US
interests.
is
It means mining
because
near
the US
them.
is next to each other.
Okay, that's fine. You can have a question.
The let's see, the space advantage. The Greenfield Boys evidence indicates that we will already go to Mars by 2026. Why would nuclear be key to that mission?
Send a person, not establish civilization. It's about establishing civilization. Can I get a question?
So is the advantage about establishing a civilization between 2026 and 2028?
Not like we can obviously go like late. The point is we are sending a person, so and the alignment is key. We can also just we can just send nuclear energy and then they can develop it themselves on there. Can I get a
Okay.
question?
Yeah.
On Prolif, you say 93% are implemented in nuclear weapon states. What about the other 7%?
The other 7% is like the evidence says like four in Egypt, and that's like
Okay,
it.
then why wouldn't we send to also the 93% that already have nuclear weapons?
Because our allies, i.e., South Korea, Saudi Arabia, etc., want nuclear energy.
Okay, but if we haven't done it yet, why wouldn't he have given to them? Also, if we know they're going to proliferate, why would we send it to them?
Two things. First is that we haven't substantially invested in nuclear energy yet, meaning we do not have the reactors to export. Second, the thing about knowing that he would proliferate, I mean, the Galinsky evidence says that the nuclear enthusiasts, they are so enthusiastic about selling nuclear energy to,
Okay,
for
but
example,
that's the
Saudi
news.
Arabia
It's
that they
not the
don't care.
government. The point is what?
No, the evidence says, quote, enthusiasts say if we sell with looser terms, the stuff about Saudi, and then it says Trump opposes tightening security.
On space, where lateral innovation is serious in 19 innovations brought up by space circles can be invented anyway for this also purposes space redundant efforts to introduce long difficult ways and by products used on transfer of money from space to research solution that are tech grid is also completely different for space and warned by the solid extinction GPS into China Soul Squad 21. 24. China has experienced a breakdown in space surpass the US as the leader in 5 out of 11 capabilities compared to America's 4. China copy space has already duplicated key tech 3 inconsistencies will get to Mars by 2026 in the square. This space argument is not equal to firmness and key 4 reject longitudinal impacts and warn how each individual 1 cause extinction 5 terraforming is impossible for 21. Atmosphere of Mars is too thin to support life insufficient CO2 92 to think an atmosphere and warm with the planet there is no way of overcoming Mars low gravity extremely bad for human health muscles trophy muscles weaken permanent vision loss colonization take millennium nothing a company can deliver there's no profitability 6 for Mars basing generates new diseases extinction circle 15 mission to Mars that alien microbes produce human time no immunity whole species wiped out microbes to wipe out animals that play we depend on warming when the warming impact inflation adaptation war turns the enter 25 Tip increases cause the natural availability of humanity and increase the possibility of mortality decrease at 90% war preventing deaths by through climate through wealth driven by fuels infrastructure capacity recovery stats indicate greening of the planet UN working with 2100 or 2 degrees Celsius no use existential humans adapt to driving extremes far worse than pessimistic than air tipping points likely low fossil fuel not the only cause of climate catastrophe caused by nuclear war to warming survival and net beneficial COVID 23 4 degrees not existential sea level rise 140 years for every meter we can adapt build the infrastructure extreme heat zones move 20 kilometers per year humans are below under conditions warming maybe suffering from cold ag effect is small 1% yield reduction if farmers can adapt their costs a lot can be done to minimize biodiversity loss 3 perception triggers financial shock well 22 and that's when the climate policy signal demand for oil and motivating them to sell as much as they can, building the market to depress price emissions, increase running the policy and effective nuclear unique atoms 2013. Nuclear energy must worries hydrocarbon supplies reliable emission free uses abundant fuel no longer protected and by the producers that manipulate other prices for even if we call emissions to be leak here 24. 90% of extra energy for more taken up by oceans they can take thousands of years to free to mix up this creates thermal like even if we eliminate all emissions for hundreds of years oceans release heat ice sheets continue to melt while temperature increases only 75 electrification to behind fluctuate transportation 90% come from oil 1% for electricity electrification is behind future compatible decarbonization investment grids to transmission need to more than double 6 cool to nuclear takes longer Afghans all graph inserted below carbon printed through cold timeline complex cyber radiation significantly increases impacts on timeline aviation 1 common is terrible concedes the after into jack tube overruns and air power is bad mix seen air power is so good opposed to make side limitations used to seek to test the result that only come from direct force the result is endless use engagement air power can't defeat a regular opponent wait out the storm connect control territory stable supposed common say air power is masterful destroying but not shaping the political outcome of war air power require a greater souls and humanitarian disasters terrorism is significantly increasing the influence of friendly nations like Iran, China, and Russia, 3 air powers, resilient but fails Astro 16. While US uncontested problems rage on with no endgame effects on the ground provided resilience, war and terror progress proved endless irreversible. Victory remains elusive because air power never occupies can't take in bombs. Often mistested innocence are inevitable when ensures new crews. Foreign and China war, heat 25. China entered decline likely to recover premature deindustrialization and strictly labor social corruption weaken the plea China's decline. Produced reluctant to reverse major war provides sole incentive to fight Taiwan no longer possessed by US KVM all 5. Air Force is lockdown by inertia ignis 20. Cells could be shut down, for bases will be inundated. Aircraft goes to steel wire fighters can reach a target to get fuel refueling. Tickets will be shot down. It wasn't insufficient text, simply bureaucratic inertia compounded by interested jurisdictions personnel shortages on board 20. The shortage of pilots of flight time degrades the ability of the Air Force to generate quality air power time needed, and attrition would be higher. Seven fuels require carbon capture day 24. Fuels produced in capture CO2 that produces chlorine gas or urbanization and burns water supply at least 23. Carbon capture on targets will only produce deadly chlorine gas used as a chemical weapon skill and produce triple the amount. Produce solution that is toxic for water. Don't have solution to dispose water. Worst nuclear way 21 water effect properties. Scarcely listed province South Asia, highly populated conflict, different rights conflict between Pakistan and India. Over Kashmir have nuclear capacity. 8 grim military adversaries, operational advantages and seeds to adversaries. Share for 24. Petroleum supply, all of U.S. military fuel have to propel a substantial distance, also transportable biofuels have low energy density weapon. Distance lock into specific fuel fighter plane cannot adapt to lack of backup, use entire war hydrogen, more flammable electricity creates dependency, vulnerable to tech, limited options for storage, renewable dependence from China, erase most fundamental advantages.
On space, conceding that China solves non-unique to the impact turn. On transition 1, Spratt says that a majority of scientists expect warming of more than 3 degrees Celsius and 82% expect to see catastrophic impacts of climate change. Prefer consensus, even if they're winning all their arguments. Independently consider that past can't guide the future. And unsustainable tipping points mean that model fails because of convergent warming crisis. 2, convergence across disciplinary models recognize the potential for cataclysmic impact. Untime 24, climate change existential impacts, wider ecological risk scenarios, harmonize across disciplines, wide range of models, all quantitative trigger for other risk, increased conflict, disease rate, climate mitigation is exacerbate vulnerabilities, including health and security, possibility of economic damage, also land, water, and food insecurity, short crops irrevocably undermining ability to recover from cataclysms such as new war goes beyond carbon cycle, encompasses land use, water availability, ocean instead, aerosol loading, ozone depletion, environmental chemicals, plastic, and PFAs. 3, food conflict causes extinction. Crypt 23, conflict in a region with food shortages lead disputes over dwindling fish, existential threats spells out of nuclear conflict. Green paradox is wrong. Karen's 19, production cannot increase production at lowest capacities predetermined by sunk investment. Any increase requires taking further investment and incentives to reduce investment in stronger. Our model involves decisions tens of thousands of reserves, and ocean warming is wrong. Adaptation can solve over large time scales, which is why Spratt says that short-term emissions declines can solve the issue, but if you have convergent crises and feedback loops, then adaptation can't solve. And electrification is relevant because they've conceded from case that nuclear can expand into other sectors and that it's sufficient solvency and it's quick. 119 small reactors easily transported, set up in days, power for 10 years without cost, and independently conceded that SMRs can be deployed in is sufficient to solve the crisis from the REM evidence, even if we don't use the coal stuff. And Conthron says their coal evidence says that we can build next to plants and increase the speed, and reactor times will influence feasibility of it. The graph does not say SMRs once, which proves feasibility. Now, not going for our contention 3, conceding that there's no impact to Taiwan war. Now, horse trading 1, the impact card is thumped by trade routes. It says that
there's an impact turn on aviation. There's an impact.
What?
CCS impact turn on aviation.
What do I say, Sumith?
CCS it only pollutes US water, not other water.
Okay, CCS only US water and other waters, and if it's bad, then they won't use them. Horse trading. First, the impact card is thumped by trade routes. The card says both. I already did that. 2, the drilling card is from 2013. If it's unpopular now, then there won't be trade-off. 3, South China Sea proves no escalation with China from small-scale conflicts. 4, horse trading is dead now. Dixon 24. Currents had a bipartisan deal, but they got it tasted in the next 4 years. Trump and Musk wielding enormous power over the process killed traditional horse trading, blasted the sort of status quo. The politics Trump campaign to ended. Doomed it. No Arctic war. Valberg 24 there. Major misconception about the Arctic. The reality is calmer. Everything can go wrong, but there's a willingness to cooperate. Conflict in the Arctic is unlikely. Conditions in the Arctic more stable than many assume. Conflict is not easily triggered. Cut the card at trigger. Now Terra and Pierce prove no attack. Schellenberger 18. Deadliest attacks in the U.S. consist of running people over, setting off bombs, shooting people. How many attacks on nuclear plants? 0. Foil plot 0. Have terrorist plan and attack. 2. Loose regulations. Attacks is inevitable. Try to increase security. NTI 23. Nuclear security regressing. Stockpiles of nuclear materials increasing at an alarming rate with violent actors on the rise. Third countries and nuclear facilities have no requirements protecting nuclear infrastructure. 3. Terrorism is inevitable. Alexander 24. The threat of another 9/11 looms. Emergence of terrorists motivated by hate, empowered by media groups to decentralize, harder to prevent. U.S. global war on terror no longer focus. There's growing sensitivity with counterterror. Their evidence concludes attacks rare. Card 23. Attacks against nuclear facilities and transport are only 91 incidents in 50 years. None result in radioactive fallout. Now prolific exports are high. Multiple countries banned by 24. Program and State Department use of SMRs to help countries build nuclear programs. Spend 75 million. Japan, Singapore, and Canada are helping Russia, China account for 87% of reactors since 2017. Energy programs are made prolific less likely by increasing. Actually, cut the card on UUVs. Countermeasures. UUVs is thumped. Reuse from 2018 and about battery faults and poor recharge time, which can definitely be solved by current renewables. 2 countermeasures solved. Robin 21. Submarines deploy interceptor drones, decoys, torpedoes, electronic warfare to disable drone systems, deploy decoys, jammer, acoustic countermeasures to create fake sensor returns, code, and detection. Now LNG is your 1 tariff stun billions 25. Trump's trade war poses a threat to LNG projects, rely on China as a key buyer, make it difficult for investment decisions. Beijing impose levies on U.S. energy, too numerous barriers to investment. Rate 25. Investment increasingly uncertain. Trump imposing tariffs on LNG materials on 50% limited labor pool. Investments of forecast profitability starting at 2030. Demand remain uncertain. Sides face hurricane risk, and we already have enough. I just cut that card.
Let's talk about the warming advantage, I guess.
Yeah.
Where in the 1AC did you read solvency bet SMRs?
The REM card.
What?
REM. Like we don't have to go for
Yeah.
We can also say SM, like SMR sufficient.
No, I said I was talking about SMRs.
Yeah.
Right, sure.
Yeah, like the link evidence isn't specific to IFR. They're just like we isolated benefits to IFR, which we can kick if we have to. Like I didn't kick them, but
Right, sure.
I don't really have a question. Actually, yeah. Let's talk about the carbon capture turns.
Yeah.
Like where do the water wars happen?
The water wars, it specifically isolates Asia. But I guess we'll also argue that it leads to like chemical weapons going everywhere, which derails some degree of your solvency on the climate advantage because nobody can solve climate change if they're being widely like attacked by chemical weapons, and also water scarcity can happen between like the US and Mexico.
Sure.
I'll take a question. I guess back to warming. What do you mean by other sectors? You said you can solve other sectors. How?
You can use the nuclear energy in things that aren't just energy.
Like what? Name another sector like nuclear energy could decarbonize, and how?
Transportation.
Wait, but our argument says transportation is impossible to electrify.
Explain.
It's specific. That's just what the card says. It literally just says that we cannot decarbonize like the transportation industry. Only 1% of so nuclear energy produces electricity, right?
Mm-hmm.
The problem is that most cars do not use electricity.
Wait, this just says that we don't use it, and the Aff says we would use it.
No, but the argument is that it is physically impossible to use it now.
Yeah,
Or just physically impossible in general.
Okay, it's not physically impossible. It says you need investment, which is the Aff.
Where does it say that?
Investment needs to double. Or like, yeah, it says investment needs to double to use it, which is
Yeah, but how is that going to like decarbonize existing cars, for example?
We don't have to win that. That's time.
Neg Wang Aff. Everyone good. On terror, we will concede that there's no impact to terrorism and that the deadliest impacts are running people over, which definitely means that the turn has literally no impact. Now, extend LNG. LNG exports are set to meet increased demand but depend on further investment to increase production. The Aff shows inconsistent government policy and demand by investing in alternatives, deterring investors, which is a conceded link. LNG is key to NATO cohesion and deterrence as it powers all of Europe. Absent US supply, they're forced to depend on Russia decking security. That escalates. Russia will attack in 2025 if it sees weakness in US abandonment, which goes nuclear due to tensions, miscalculation, and causes extinction through famine. On the responses, first, they say that terrorist slump is not specific. Our evidence says that European countries are still buying our oil and gas, which is enough for investors to continue investing. It's also a key component of tariff negotiations for countries to buy US energy. Then they say there's barriers to investment, but getting rid of tariffs outweighs, and their evidence is about people investing, not governments. On the labor pool argument, this doesn't matter because there's still enough LNG, and this was a one-line blip. Prefer our evidence, which looks at European gas specifically and finds that it's enough. Look, these risks are all very small and solved by the fact that Trump likes LNG and that Europe does too. On Wang. First, it's time frame. The perception of the Aff is enough to deter investors because they see inconsistent government policy. Perception of energy vulnerabilities fuels adversarial aggression in NATO and in Russia. China will immediately wait, hold on. Sorry. Perception of NATO weakness in U.S. abandonment immediately caused war. Conceded that Russia has vast military capabilities now, whereas it takes time for climate change to happen because obviously it's about long-term risks such as crossing table points and sea level rise. And regardless, they can't access solvency in time, which means that their link also happens later, which means that and time frame comes first. A, intervening actors and solve for their argument. B, living longer is always better because it increases value to life. Second, it solves the Aff. U.S. LNG exports to bolster alliances by showing commitment, making war less likely. Third, it turns warming, incentivizes destruction of all minerals critical to the transition, so no progress can happen, causing carbon lock-in, jacking up prices while failing to transition. Independently, the military and manufacturing, which is massively scaled up in war, uses tons of fossil fuels and forests are burned and releasing carbon. Third, it decks solvency will destroy all minerals critical to transition, and Russia war overall decks Aff solvency because they're only supplier of uranium and helium, the key fuel for U.S. reactors, and they cut that off in a war on their case. They have dropped every single warrant in the impact defense. Temperature increases caused by natural causes. Human prosperity is increasing despite climate change. Adaptation decreases deaths massively by 98%, driven by wealth generated by fossil fuels, which turns the case. And 2100 is when 2 degrees hits, meaning they definitely cannot access time frame. They have also conceded that humans have survived in worse temperatures, and that nuclear war also causes temperature increases, which turns case. Our evidence is better because it considers all tipping points and finds that the probability of hitting all of them is low, and the planet is greening, so there's no food loss. Their only response is the studies argument, but it doesn't matter if they have studies, if they have just conceded every warrant, insofar as studies are just a way for you to break the clash. Second, we're also going for the fact that you cannot electrify the sector. They just say that we can adapt nuclear energy to other places. This doesn't answer our argument, which is that the transportation sector relies on fossil fuels and that nuclear energy only replaces electricity, which means that even if they are correct that nuclear energy can replace all electricity, they're just not winning that it can replace fossil fuels like oil, which means that the transportation sector is a massive all cause. Insofar as their own uniqueness says we're reaching tipping points now, it doesn't matter. Finally, they have also conceded there's 140 years for every meter of sea rise, and the adaptation solves. Food production declines by only 1%, and extreme heat zones move only 20 kilometers per year. All of these warrants in impact defense were conceded.
Yeah, we have 30 seconds left. Order is Aff weighing Neg. Nuclear energy facilitates the green transition, minimal waste and maximal energy. Plants produce no emissions comparable with wind, 1/3 solar continuous energy, where solar and wind require backup as compensated 2 years of emissions can conquer. Climate change can complement renewals, which cause the following gets exported to other countries. I'll do the impact stuff when frontlining. The first argument is that the adaptation stuff. I will go for every war conceded out of Sprat. First, they've conceded that tipping points are coming centuries faster than models predict, which means that our evidence happens a lot faster and is a lot faster than 2100. The second thing they've conceded is that the quote past cannot guide the future because scientists were wrong and their models are incorrect. Collapse of AMAC and collapse of AMAC coral causes massive instability because of biodiversity going away, which causes warming to have bigger effects in the status quo. The third thing they conceded is that we're passing major tipping points now, which is what the Sprat evidence says. It postdates their evidence, and it's because they've concluded that their models are literally inaccurate. And says that the way they can predict their warming is wrong because they consider linear functions instead of the non-linear exponential functions of warming, like the collapse of many biodiversity things that cause political instability, cause accidental warming that cause us to all die. Now, this is all conceded. So the second response is that transportation fuel possible, but they conceded and nuclear energy can aid transportation fuels. That's Kramer evidence. It is quoted in evidence. Now, the Wayne debate first try or die extinction is inevitable in the status quo. So after the only unique office, even a 1% chance, yeah, solves means you vote after time frame is irrelevant. Unless the neg is 100 and any hesitancy voting on the VA means the turns case isn't 100% and inevitable. Second time frame, you see the Sprat says tipping points are every century is faster. We don't have to win that is faster than the neg. If we win try or die and win that the scenario is relatively fast, only the neg can preserve minimal life. When we have the chance to preserve all of humanity, 3 severity, A is their internal link of magnifying climate change causes converging existential crisis like resource wars, disease, econ collapse, which are more likely to cause extinction than one flashpoint is the overwhelm adaptive capacity. B, climate change state survival, which is the most likely scenario for nuclear escalation. Countries don't want to start wars unless they are forced to. See, their hotspot is one region, but climate change causes global shock, so it impacts every scenario globally, which increases the likelihood of extinction that probability first because impacts only matter if they occur at minimum, but rates clash all the other way. And also, weighing argument, the link alone turns case will send nuclear to instead of LNG if we are winning net benefits to nuclear energy, so they'll like it more and they'll use it. Now they're weighing. They say time frame intervening actors. No, evidence says policymakers are not considering it now. They say live longer doesn't matter, and we have a chance to preserve all of humanity. The first thing they said why it turns warming is that it destroys all minerals. They've literally conceded in flex prep no warrant. They say military uses tons of fossil fuels. Okay, well it doesn't matter. We'll use nuclear instead, and they've conceded global follow-on, so the other countries will use nuclear energy. They say Russia decks Aff solvency doesn't matter. We'll just mine uranium LNG. Perception is wrong. They concede rapier that intense restrictions on LNG have already occurred, which obviously disproves the argument about Russia preemptively striking as a result of the Aff. They say their evidence is, quote, outweighs, but what does this even mean? The U.S. has already increased the price of LNG by 50%, which probably means that countries can't afford it or will switch to different sellers. Both should dump the internal link our evidence postdates. So preferred over the YAP and EU specificity if the tariffs are wide sweeping, so should be irrelevant. I'll answer their impact time frame here. Even if Russia claims they will invade by 2025, there's no reason as to why U.S. It takes years to plan on wars in the first place. They're bogged down in Ukraine. All reasons why the statements of them invading in 2025 are irrelevant and cannot be predicted. They say bolsters alliances, but bolsters alliances is irrelevant because it's not turn our argument. Mac, anything else?
The try or die stuff, clarify the meta weighing.
Sumith, you got it.
Extinction is inevitable in the status quo. Impacts are non-unique. Only chance of preserving humanity, so it outweighs the magnitude. That's about
Okay.
it.
Why
You're
does this, you said something about turns case. Why does it come over turns case?
Because the impacts are inevitable.
Okay, cool. That's fine. You can have a question.
Okay. On LNG,
Uh-huh.
you say that like the perception of the aff is enough to deter investments, but why didn't Trump's tariffs thump?
They don't because Trump's tariff specific. Well, you've conceded the argument that Trump explicitly also made the statement that if other countries buy U.S. energy, then he won't like tariff them.
Okay, but the point is he still tariffed a lot of European
Well,
countries.
he tariffed European countries, but the point is that they knew if they bought U.S. energy, then it'd be fine.
So
Wait,
why did
wait.
but
So
also
you're saying
but
that he
also-
made a tariff. So Trump has a tariff on LNG, but he said that if they buy LNG, the tariff on
Wait, your
LNG
evidence does not
goes
say
away.
that. Does your evidence? Hold on. I don't think your evidence says that
It
Trump
says LNG. It says tariffs on LNG. So I don't get it. You say that we have a tariff
no,
on
it
LNG,
says-
but Trump said that if they
Wait,
buy LNG, the
your
tariff on
evidence
LNG
does not
goes
say
away.
that Trump tariffed LNG. Oh, wait.
Yes, it does.
Quote, no. Trump imposed tariffs on steel and critical infrastructure components.
Wait, just explain the defense on the argument you went for. Or sorry, on LNG.
I want Leon to explain the front line.
Okay, quote.
Wait,
Your
explain the
later-
defense and I can
Yeah,
explain
wait,
the front
explain the defense.
The defense is
Is-
that we taxed the ability to make LNG.
No, we did not, bro. That's just not what the evidence says. It says we tariffed like other things.
It says, yeah, wait. I'm reading the evidence now. Quote, Trump imposed tariffs on steel and infrastructure
Dude,
components.
there's an indictment in Grand Crossfire, dude.
Yeah, but I think your evidence should defend what it says, especially because it's relevant to the front line. Because my front line was that Trump said that he will, if other
our
countries buy
Trump-
energy.
tariffs on LNG?
It doesn't say there are tariffs on LNG.
Trump have imposed tariffs on but future tariffs remain uncertain. LNG facilities require specialty materials. Like it requires steel, which it inhibits.
Sure, but the evidence, regardless, says that the hold on. Which front line are you talking about?
Bro, is your front line about what Trump said just an analytic?
Yeah, that was the front line to the first thing about
What's the
about
front line to
tariff
this
Trump.
one?
The
What's the front
second
line to
thing,
this one?
the second thing says that our evidence says that Trump specifically supports exporting LNG to Europe, which is why he will like do so because your evidence is not specific to European gas.
Neg Aff. We are going for LNG. LNG exports are said to mean increased demand, but depend on further investment to increase production. The actions inconsistent government policy made by investing in alternatives deterring investors. LNG is key to new creation deterrence and as the power solves Europe as the supply. They're forced to depend on Russia taking security that against Russia will attack in 2025 and sees weakness and use abandonment, which is nuclear detentions, extinction through famine. Their only response is that we did tariffs on LNG. No, we didn't. They are grossly misreading the evidence, and they've conceded that this is irrelevant because tariffs will go away now because countries are set to buy massive amounts of LNG, i.e. Asia, Europe. This is all a key component of tariff negotiations, which is all conceded. It means this response is completely irrelevant no matter how you interpret it. The way one, they've conceded or affirming that the perception of the aff is enough to deter investors because they see inconsistent government policy and perception and native weakness and use abandonment immediately causes war on Russia's side. They say Russia's bogged down in Ukraine, but they've dropped the evidence. This is that Russia is at peak production now and is massively ready for war, and that Ukraine is just a distraction too. They've dropped that there's no existential wars in the affirmative because U.S. LNG exports bolster alliances by showing commitment, making war to rescue for any adversary. Three, they've dropped that war with third warring military and manufacturing would massively ramp up, which is massively scaled up in war, which emits more fossil fuels and forests are burned down, which releases carbon, all of which means that the aff also worsens warming. They've also conceded that nuclear energy will accelerate the rate at which we hit tipping points, which means that the neg turns the case. They've also dropped terminal defense in their solvency. If there's Russia war, they are a key supplier of uranium and halley, which are key supplies for U.S. reactors, which cut us off in a war, which is that aff solvency is literally impossible because we do not have the fuel to create reactors. I will respond to their weighing now. They say try that, but this is wrong. If we win, the dissent is 100% because it means that we die before we can try, which is a sequencing issue and also precludes all future life. They say that they have more severity, but we have won that Russia war is enough to cause extinction. They say with the nuclear instead of LNG, but this is new defense, and they We are going for the defense that nuclear cannot replace other things, which also applies. Okay, the case. They've dropped that most things rely on oil, but nuclear energy can only generate electricity, which means that we cannot decarbonize at all. And second, they've conceded that tipping points are unlikely. Humans have survived worse temperatures and adaptation solves. We will adapt things like foods and crops, so there's no things like food wars.
Aff then Neg. Nuclear energy facilitates the green transition, minimal waste, maximal energy penalties, no emissions comparable to wind, 1/3 of solar continuous energy, where solar and wind do require backup, has compensated 2 years of emissions, can conquer climate change, and can complement renewables, causes fallen, which is back, and now their response to first is in nuclear cannot do electrification. First, read our evidence is far better on this question on actually being able to solve climate change, and it says that it is sufficient independently. They've conceded the Kramer evidence, which says that it can solve transport, which is far more specific than their evidence. Next, they say that we can survive worse temperatures. Look, the Sprat evidence was just conceded. First, scientific consensus. 2, the past cannot dictate what the future was. An explicit line conceded, which means all of their impact events is 0 because the past cannot dictate the future. They reference past tipping points, past things like that, but independently feedback loops that are happening now and important tipping points like the amok collapsing are reasons why the impact is true now. Triodite extinction is inevitable in the status quo, so the Aff is the only unique offense. Even a 1% chance that the Aff solves means you vote Aff time frame is irrelevant unless the Neg is 100%. Any hesitancy on voting on the DA means case isn't 100 and inevitable, which because we have a risk of defense means that the DA isn't 100, which is done there. Next, they say and on time frame we don't have to win. That is faster than the Neg conceded. If we win Triodite and win that the scenario is relatively fast, the Neg can only preserve minimal life, where we have the chance to preserve all of humanity. Now, their responses, they say that the military leads to fossil fuels. No, concede that we export military, which means that even if we aren't using nuclear, other countries can, and that we'll just use nuclear. Next, they say that if Russia uses uranium, no, we concede that we can mine our own. In the case of the Aff, now they say that the is there anything else I need to do on weighing? I don't think so. They say yeah, not their case. Look, the LNG stuff is just dropped. They've conceded rapier, which is that we have tariffs on the production of LNG. It's about spiking the cost of production of LNG, which thus increases the prices. Even if they're right about their indict, it doesn't matter because they've conceded that because the U.S. increases prices, the countries will shift to different sellers or they can no longer afford it, both of which concede the internal link. Look, the distinction was made new in Grand Crossfire. If you had it flowed as LNG tariffs and Leon didn't explicitly make the distinction in summary, then don't evaluate. Even if you do evaluate it, our evidence says the LNG prices have to spike because of the tariffs, which obviously dumps the link because they've conceded that they switch producers and they don't do it anymore, which should be, even if you think we're wrong, should be sufficient risk of mitigation to just vote on Triodite because extinction is inevitable and the Aff has to outweigh.